Hello and welcome. I'm Trip. Welcome back to another video. You might have noticed that I'm not in the garage or outside in the cold. Today we'll talk about sim rigs, or my new sim rig, which the thumbnail will probably give that away. So during the winter months, all the tracks are closed, and since it's really cold outside, I have less motivation to go out and look in the garage or outside and bust my knuckles. So what better thing to do is to practice my driving skills on a racing sim. Even though I've had a steering wheel and pedal set up for maybe a year or so now, I haven't used it as much as I would like to. I mostly brought it out to practice a new track or something I was going to. The main reason is because I had to set it up every time I wanted to use it. I clamped it onto my desk and drove here where I do most of my editing and other work. Which worked, got the job done, except for the steering wheel. I can never get it tight enough. And I'm in a rolling chair, so I'm in it rolling around, so it's not the most ideal setup. So I wanted to go to a more dedicated setup. And this room is definitely too small for a dedicated sim setup, since I have my editing PC, and also my wife has her gaming setup. So come with me, let me show you where I put it. What are you doing in here? Who said you can play my game? It's my games. My toys. Get your own. This is my new budget sim rig. I didn't spend a ton of money on it. I also didn't try to get the cheapest stuff possible. I wanted stuff that was still pretty good and gets the job done, but on a budget that's reasonable and pretty effective. I know it might be a little ghetto, a little janky the way I set this up, but it's one of the things I used what I had laying around, and also to make things affordable, but it works. Yes, that piece of wood's been clamped down to a single sewing machine. It was already there, so I used it. So let's talk about the main part of the rig, which is your steering wheel pedal setup. I went with the Thrustmaster 300 series. The reason I went with it, because it was the most affordable belt-driven wheel there is. And the reasons for the belt-driven and not a gear-driven like some of the cheaper, like Logitech steering wheels give you, has a lot better feedback, and you can actually feel the resistance. Like if you go around a corner or hit a bump or something, or if you spin out, the steering wheel will spin out. Which is kind of hard to show on camera, but whenever I hit like a curb or bumps, I can feel it in the steering wheel, and it feels a lot more realistic. But other than that, it's a pretty simple setup. There's definitely far more fancier wheels, far more expensive wheels, but this is probably one of the better of the cheaper wheels. You can literally spend thousands of dollars on a good wheel and base setup. You can definitely get them a lot cheaper, but it's not going to have the feel as you want. It's going to feel more like a toy. This feels less like a toy. Next on the list is the pedal setup. Since I drive a manual car, or most of my cars are manuals, I wanted one with a clutch. You can get these in a 2-pedal setup if you want. This is not the best setup, which I think this is probably one of the downsides to my setup, is this pedal set. It works, it gets the job done, but it really doesn't have any feel, really. No feedback, no very little resistance. I did order a little kit for the brake. You put this little rubber stopper inside the brake spring to give you a little bit more resistance than it has. But yeah, it works. Gets the job done. It's definitely one of those areas I wouldn't mind upgrading in the future. Get something a little bit better. But it's fine for now. Now, what about the shifter? Again, I went with the Thrustmaster shifter, the gated shifter, because I wanted something that felt kind of realistic. I mean, I still manage to miss gears sometimes. If you're wondering what this piece of cardboard is, this is a little mod I did. Since this has a 7th gear and nothing I drive has 7 gears, so I put a piece of cardboard in there, that way I wouldn't accidentally go in 7th. Because surprisingly I did that a lot. I kept on wanting to go too far to the right, missing 5th gear, and I'll find 7th. So the cardboard has been working pretty good so far. Cheap, easy. You can also go for the Logitech shifter, but I feel like it's a little too loose, a little too floppy, which probably resemble the Honda Fit a lot, so wouldn't be terrible. But that has zero type of feedback or anything, so it just also the steering wheel does have the flappy paddles, so if I'm driving something that like an exotic car, I can use those if I want, so that's always an option. Now that the meat and potatoes are out of the way, I guess let's talk about the frame. So the frame was this Marauder Racing cockpit frame that I got off Amazon for 160 bucks, so it's fairly cheap, which is, I was definitely taking a gamble with this. I was definitely worried that it was going to be like too flimsy or not go together right or be missing nuts and bolts and stuff, but honestly it's actually not that bad. For a cheap frame, it's surprisingly very sturdy. There's not a whole lot of flex. Everything went together pretty easy, so no complaints there. It has a good bit of adjustment, so I can pull the steering wheel arms up if I need to. I can pull this base up. I can adjust the seating position so I can spread them out. The seat did not come with it, but there is an option for a seat to come with it. I just used the seat I already had. The pedal box is adjustable, so I can angle it up or down if I need to. My seat is still on a slider, so I can adjust that. But like I said, the biggest thing I was worried about if it was going to be not sturdy, if it was going to flex around. And honestly, like moving it around, it's pretty stiff. I mean, there is a little bit of play here, but it's not unbearable. It's a lot better than what I had when I had this bolted to my desk. This moves a little bit, but I figured if it was flexing around too much, I can always modify it. I can always add braces, beef it up if I had to, but I really haven't. So that was my justification of going with a cheaper one, is to modify it myself to make it better. And this just works. A good base can literally cost you $1,000. You can spend $1,000 on a decent aluminum base. Like I said before, this one did not come with a seat, but you can get with a seat. This came out of my FRS, which is a good, comfortable seat that holds you in. A very nice factory seat that I had laying around because I put a racing seat in it. It still has the sliders. It honestly wasn't very hard to mount it. I just went to Home Depot, got this piece of metal, and just bolted the seat to it and bolted it to the frame. Very straightforward. It still reclines. It still has the bolsters. I can adjust that, everything as if it was in a real car. I even had the floor mat. Okay, I've showed you all the SimRig portion. Now let's talk about what powers it, the PC. So one of the dilemmas I had with going with a standalone setup is I had to get another PC, since I used my other one for editing and other stuff. So I picked up a used pre-built Omen 25L, a very inexpensive computer. Like I said, it's a pre-built, something you can get from like Best Buy, Walmart and stuff, or just online. Nothing too special. Okay, let's go over the stats of the PC. See, the CPU is a Intel i7 at 2.9 gigahertz. The graphics card is a RTX 2060 Super. It's running 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM. Has a 500 gigabyte SSD. And that's the main bits. It did only have one fan, so I did add the 2 extra fans. Unfortunately, this case is pretty small, so I would like to have added more. I might still get some smaller fans to add to it. I will add probably more RAM in the future, or maybe a secondary hard drive. So yeah. The thing about most sim games like Assetto Corsa, iRacing, and stuff like that, you don't need a very beefy computer to run them pretty good. Like I said, this is like a moderate setup, but it really has zero issues running these types of games. Usually the graphics aren't that great on these games. And since I bought this used, it actually came with everything. It came with this monitor, the keyboard, the mouse pad. The monitor is a 27-inch Asus 144 Hz gaming monitor. It's definitely a lot smaller than I would have liked for my setup. I definitely plan on going bigger, but this is working fine for now. And the reason I'm using this long piece of wood is so I can get the screen as close to the steering wheel as possible. Since it is kind of a smaller screen, I wanted it to get pretty close. That way it doesn't look too bad when I'm playing. But honestly, it hasn't been that bad. Like, I thought I was going to hate it being so small, but I've already put like, I don't know, a dozen hours with this thing. Probably wondering what this thing is. It's an old phone I had lying around. That way I can put my gauge cluster or whatever other info I want on it. As you can see, I can put vital information on it, like RPM, miles per hour, gear, best lap time, tire pressures, and you can modify it to what you want. I'm using SimHub. It's a free app you can download. This phone I already had. It was an old phone, an old Samsung Note I've had it laying around for a few years. So that was pretty much free. I already had all the clamps. So yeah, pretty much free setup. I do plan on modifying it. I use stuff I already had laying around that works for now. And for a pretty affordable, low budget, simple setup, I'm pretty happy with it. Works very well. I've already got a lot of hours into it. Even though this setup still cost me a few $100, it's gonna save me money in the long run because I can practice over and over and over again on tracks that I know I'm gonna go to. Example, this is CMP. I plan on going to it next year sometime, and I already have hundreds and hundreds of laps. If you know anything about doing track days, it's very expensive for one, for entry fee, expensive, and also consumables, tires, brakes, oil, all that stuff adds up. So being able to turn lap after lap after lap in a pretty realistic setting will save me money. Okay, let's go over how much we spent on this rig. Now keep in mind, this is for a dedicated rig. I could have made it a lot cheaper if I used my old PC, one of my other TVs, and went with a cheaper setup, but I wanted something that was standalone and something I would use more often. Which only ended up being a little bit more than I thought it was going to be. See, for the PC, for the computer, I paid $650 for it. And that was for all of it. For the tower, monitor, keyboard, mouse, all the wiring. So $650, which is the biggest chunk of the cost. The second most expensive thing was the actual steering wheel and pedal setup, the Thrustmaster T300 RS, which is discontinued now. So yeah, and I paid $400 for that setup. Next thing is the Thrustmaster shifter. It was $200. I forgot until now how expensive this shifter was. Next is the stand, which technically I didn't buy it. It was a Christmas gift from my wife, but I'll throw it in there anyway. It was $160, which I already showed you. So one of the cheaper things so far. Then I'll throw in an extra $20 for like the wood, the metal. What do you want? What? What is it? Did Timmy fall in a well? What is it, Minchie? Are you confused? So yeah, $20 for the wood, piece of metal, stuff I already had, but I'll throw $20 in there. The seat already had, free. The phone, that little stand already had. Floor mat already had. Of course, these are things you don't need as well. So it's all in all, it is $1,430. Can you believe I spent $1,400 on all this? Which, yeah, it sounds expensive, but it's not that bad considering how much a lot of people spend on the nice rigs. People spend $6,000-7,000 easily on the rigs, on those nice setups. Of course, that's with the Fanatec wheels and pedals and triple screens and VR and motion rigs and stuff. I think somebody wants to go for a ride. Want to go for a drive? You drive? Of course, this is all upgradable. I'm planning on, this is pretty much version 1. I do plan on upgrading the bigger monitor, maybe throw some more RAM in the computer, change this setup, because it's kind of janky right now, but it works. And yeah, I can only make it better. And if you're wondering, this is the guest / workout room that we don't use very often. But that is it for this video. I hope I didn't bore you too much. Hope you enjoy my rig. And if you would like to see more sim content, let me know in the comments if I should stream or if you want to come drive with me. But speaking of driving, I'm going to go street race through the streets of Tokyo.
Wow.